What's up, everybody? It is Esoteric Nomad, and it's been a little while since I've made a podcast. Like I said, I tend to rely on spiritual guidance to prompt me when I feel like it's necessary to record a message, a stream of consciousness that I might be receiving. So it's not necessarily on a schedule, and that's okay. I think a lot of times, many times, too many times in this society and in our lives, right? We are adhering to schedules and deadlines and expectations of deadlines and schedules. And instead of letting things naturally flow and naturally generate on their own and enforcing them before their time or ready to manifest or arrive, that can cause unnecessary stress and tension and just negative self-talk, any number of things, really. So just the importance of being like water and letting things flow comes to mind. I specifically wanted to get on here today and share something that I had recently had the privilege of hearing, and that was and will continue to be immensely powerful in my own life. I can already tell for just how impactful it was when I heard it. And it's one of those things that I'm sure many of you can relate. Like there's things that we think we know, right? And then there's things that we think we know that we may not even be conscious of. And I know that may not make a lot of sense, but like we just assume things we may not even be aware of, essentially. And in that, what I mean is, I know in the spiritual community, and especially, I think society is starting to lean more in the direction of more spiritual practices, meditation, affirmations, manifestation. A lot of these things are being brought to the forefront, at least that I'm aware of, more so than they were in the past and when I was growing up. And it runs the risk of becoming trendy in a sense of people just doing it because they saw somebody else say it, or doing it for the wrong intentions and not really investigating the true source of whatever it is that's being presented and seeing how they might need to cultivate that in their lives, aside from just, it's a trend. But in that, affirmations and how immensely powerful they can be and are actually, because we are, we have the power to create our own realities. We are creating our own realities, whether you're aware of it, unaware of it, don't believe it, it's happening. And in that, the sort of obligation and responsibility I feel like we have to speak positive things, to be extremely mindful, at least, of what we are experiencing. And that takes effort. It does, because a lot of times, especially, I work with kids, teenagers, and a lot of the times they're just saying things and they don't even know that they're saying them. Specifically in the space that I work in, we have a rule where they cannot use colorful metaphors, as we call it. So cussing, profanity. Now, I use profanity in my daily life. I do. But the goal of getting them or telling them that in this space that we occupy, we are not using that language, is to get them to think differently, to get them to be conscious of what they're saying, and how what they're saying might influence those around them, how it does affect others around them, especially at that age when so much is impulse and instinct. In that, it's like, a lot of times they'll use a word, and then I'm like, all right, that's, so in that space, we tell them, I have to do push-ups if they use a cuss word. So it's like 10 push-ups or so. And a lot of times they're like, I didn't even realize I said it. And I'm like, yeah, like we're not always conscious of the things that we're saying. And that's sad, but it's, in a sense, it's just, I think it's kind of how we've been programmed to exist. Our speech is probably one of the last things that a lot of us, at least, are being really fully aware of. Now, hopefully, you are paying attention to the things you're saying and you realize that it does have an impact on those around you. But I'm speaking specifically of the things we're saying to ourselves on our own when no one else is around. So I have a routine of speaking a series of positive affirmations in the morning, every morning, and throughout the day I have like a reminder set on my phone where it'll pop up and it'll be a list of affirmations that I'll just quietly read to myself, and it's on my mind, and that's super helpful because if you think about it in the sense of, like, say you're not really fully a believer of positive affirmations, but at the same time think about the negative things you say to yourself. Oh, like, it never goes my way. It's always the same thing, blah, 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 blah. Well, if it's always the same thing, maybe part of that has to do with the fact that you're saying that it's always the same thing. And what if it comes down to being such a simple, small change of just changing what we're saying? Now, I don't believe that that's the only thing that we have to tweak. There's other things, absolutely. But I do know that the words that I'm using play an immense role in that. And so speaking of positive affirmations, being aware of the things that we're saying, it's a simple thing. It's like, it's a small kindness we can do to ourselves. And it's a fun little trial thing you can try just for a week. Be very conscious and aware of the positive things that you're saying. Set a reminder on your phone. If you're like me and things slip your mind, you've got a million things going on during the day, but you have your phone with you all the time, set those reminders. So it's something that'll pop up and that'll remind you in that moment. And then just give it a little bit of time, because nothing changes in a day. I mean, I do believe in sudden unexpected shifts, and also things also take time. So, I feel like I'm being directed to kind of speak on something differently real quick. So one of the things also that I've recently heard that was super helpful for me to hear was, when it comes to speaking positive affirmations, yes. Now, we think of that in terms of when we're having a negative thought sometimes, right? Like, our morning there's traffic, there's a lot of things just regulating us, and we're tense, we're anxious. And in that, we might think, oh, well, let me redirect my thoughts. I don't want to know my entire day is not ruined. This is just a moment in my day. Let me say a positive affirmation. But it was brought on by something negative occurring, or a negative thought. Recently, it's been brought to my attention that I can also speak those positive things, comforting, reassuring things, in terms of positive things that I am feeling. And I say that for myself because I am someone who has had, as I'm sure we all have, so many of us at least, experienced, if you've had any type of trauma in your life, if you've had any type of pattern or conditioning of where you are sort of used to or comfortable with chaos, things not going your way, people leaving, people abandoning you, people not being kind to you, any sort of negative pattern in your life, if we are used to that our bodies in a sense become conditioned to that. And so in that, our brains sort of adopt a familiarity with that. Now, I heard something funny where it said, like, our brains don't give a shit about our feelings, they just care about our survival. And that's true. Like, your brain will develop a sense of familiarity around some fucked up shit. It will. The shit you don't really feel like, oh, I shouldn't feel comforted by this, but I do. That's okay, and that happens. But it also, we need to be mindful of this in positive situations. Now, I know for someone like me who has a good majority of my life, I have experienced a fair amount of chaos, a fair amount of upheaval, and just one thing after the other has occurred in the past. And in that, I've noticed that my mind and my body, because our bodies will absolutely record that message, that information, and respond accordingly. Racing heartbeat, getting sweaty, feeling nervous, being tired. There's so many ways our bodies react to trauma. And I didn't think that when positive things start to happen, that would cause any sort of dysregulation within me. And now that I've heard that is something that can occur, it makes total sense to me now that I'm really thinking about it. Like, if we are so used to something negative occurring in our lives, and, regardless of if we've tried to shift out of it and we were thinking positively now, and, our focus is in the right direction and we've got our shit together and we're aiming to be better, your body still is storing those memories. And in that, it takes time and conditioning to get yourself to respond physically different as well. That's why, I know in college I had to take public speaking, and I was super nervous. I mean, I was nervous the entire semester I had to take that class, but it did get easier as I went along, because I did repetition and things to, face that fear and to constantly encounter it. And eventually my body began to recognize it as, okay, this isn't as scary. Yes, this is something we don't enjoy doing. And also, like, it's not so bad. And so my body stopped getting that nervous, fluttery heart palpitations. That started to subside after some time. And so with the positive affirmations, with the positive feelings, when things are going well in our lives, I think it's crucial that we do that as well. Like, especially if we've come from trauma, any amount of trauma. I don't feel like there's any trauma that really outweighs another. We've got to start comparing traumas, for one, because trauma it's subjective to the individual. If you experienced it and it affected you and it hurt or it was traumatic, in that sense, like, it's valid. So just being, when we're in situations where things are going well, and say someone is entering our lives and is treating us how we deserve to be treated, and things are manifesting in our lives that are going exactly how we've always dreamed and wanted them to be, that can also be dysregulating. And I was not aware of that. And like I said, when I heard it, though, it clicked and it made sense, as a lot of things do. It's like, that's what I meant about the knowing before we know it. Like, or it just assuming that, this is information I had all the pieces to, but I didn't. And so how beneficial it's going to be for me moving forward to remind myself in moments where I'm feeling a lot of positivity and excitement and hopefulness that it's okay, that I'm safe, that I don't have to be suspicious of it. The term cautiously optimistic, that's still okay. We still need that discretion. We still need to use our intuition and be mindful of the tools we've acquired and the signs, and make sure we're still paying attention. It's not blindly optimistic, it's cautiously. And in being cautious, we don't have to put out that energy of negative suspicion. It can just be gradual, a one day at a time type thing. But I felt like that was super, super helpful for me to hear, and I wanted to pass that along to anyone out there in the listening world that has been following along with my podcast, or if you've just recently hopped on and started listening. I have many podcasts released on Spreaker and on Podbean, and also on my Facebook page. I have a pinned post at the top with all the links to all the podcast episodes that I have released. You can look me up under the name Micah Ingram. That's Micah, and then Ingram is Ingram. I'm on Facebook. I believe it's public, so I don't believe you'll have to send me a friend request. You might, I'm not sure. But like I said, the link, the post where all the links is posted at the top of my page. It's pinned to the profile, so you can take a look at those other podcasts if you'd like. I share bits and pieces of things that I've been learning, that I've learned along my journey, that I am learning, that I'm currently integrating, that I integrated in the past. Just a lot of helpful things that I've acquired along this spiritual path and throughout my struggles with addiction, homelessness, domestic violence. I mean, you name it, pretty much everything. I appreciate anybody who's been following along. I wanted to stop by today and drop off that little sprinkle of goodness that helped me, so I thought it would help someone else. I hope everybody is, after this eclipse season that we're still in the eclipse season technically, but, the eclipse have passed, the energy is still very strong and potent. Let's all stay hydrated. Let's all make sure we're giving ourselves the rest. There is no obligation to be productive. You are still worthy. You are still enough. If you are not productive, keep that in mind. I hope everyone is keeping their vibes high and staying safe out there in these cosmic streets. Namaste.